Hi friend, come along with me as we refinish this end table. It's pretty rough, and as I was checking it out, I found a few surprises, as I sometimes do. On the underneath side, there were these magnets which held something on, I'm not sure what, but the real mystery was right over here. This little doodad was just stuck on there really well. I couldn't actually get it off, and I just don't know what it was for. So if you have any ideas, comment below. After that, I decided to start sanding, and what I wanted to do was to sand the top all the way back to the wood grain so that I could use stain on it. And unfortunately, as is the case with a lot of these projects, once I get them started, is I had to pivot and make a different plan because the top of the wood was damaged and just didn't look quite as good as I expected. So I did sand the top and the whole of the bottom as well, just a scuff sand to be able to apply the paint. So I think it's important to be flexible with these kinds of projects because you could get frustrated and just not get what you want, but you just have to move on and plan something else. And so next, what I was going to do, my next plan was to fill in this groove that was all along the top. I just wanted to update this table a little bit. So I used wood filler. Had I to do it all over again, I would use Bondo. I found that's a much harder finish and it dries way faster. But I just used this wood filler and applied it with my fingers and was able to fill it in pretty well. You want it to be pretty flush with the top because I just hand sanded this whenever it was dried and finished so that I made sure it didn't sand too much with my electric sander. So here's me just fiddling around, filling in those grooves. And my next step was to clean all that dust off that we just sanded and also all the cobwebs that you seem to find with old pieces like this. And my next step was to then reconstruct this drawer. So the drawer front was completely broken off, but I did just use some wood glue and I was able to apply it with a paintbrush and put this right back together. So that was a pretty simple fix. And I'm glad I had the front, or else it wouldn't have been so simple. So that worked out really well in my favor. Next, I did do that hand sanding of the top and got it all perfectly smooth because you're about to see, instead of stain, I decided I'm going to paint the top and use a glaze to make a faux wood grain pattern. So stay tuned for that. And here's my little helper. He is always wanting to be in the middle of the action. So I just let him because this paint is like non-toxic and low odor. So I just thought, you know what, just let him play. And surprisingly, he got zero paint on his clothes, so that was surprising. But he just wanted to kind of hang out, and so we did. So here I'm painting the bottom in a primer so that I can come back and use the white Rustoleum white linen chalk paint, which is my favorite. At this point, I had to decide if I wanted to keep the original hardware or if I was going to get something new, and I decided to go ahead and keep it. So I just left the holes as they were there originally. And I was able to just use a portion of a quart of this chalk paint, even after doing I think it was like 2 to 3 coats on this project. So it goes a long ways. I definitely had enough of the paint left over to do another project later, which, let's be honest, we all know that I will. I love that white paint. It's my favorite.
And one thing I want to note that's really helpful whenever you use a primer that is
just a little different shade or color than your paint is that I can see where I've been, because oftentimes I don't know if this is just me or my personality type, but I am such a distracted painter. So I will start painting on one side and just jump to another place. So I'm really bad at seeing, okay, this is where I've been and I have yet to paint here. I'm really a distracted painter. I don't know, surely I'm not the only one. Let me know if you share this quirk. But anyway, so painting over the gray makes it a lot easier to see my progress, which is also really satisfying, is to watch the progress on these projects. So next I'm showing you what I'm going to use on the top surface. And this is by far probably the most time-consuming part, but also it's super fun because once you have your gray paint dried, then you just paint on the glaze. And the point of the glaze, do follow the instructions on the can, as I know that will be really helpful to you as it was to me. But it's really important just to put the product on, and then the more important step is how you take the product off or how you move it around. So when it comes to the paintbrush, painting your lines and filling in like I am, kind of like you can see here, the key is really moving around the product. And after you've already got it on there, wait about 10 minutes so that it can have some time to get a little bit tacky, and then moving the product around, which is super fun. And you do this until it's to your desired look. So here I'm using a dry brush and I'm just trying to keep really straight lines, which is hard for me, and trying to make it look exactly kind of the way that I want in my mind. It's really pretty foolproof, although I will say it's good to do long, even strokes, not, like halfway up or something. You'll really be able to see if you do it that way, but just long, even strokes along the whole surface that you're trying to paint. So here I'm doing a little bit more touch up at some lighter spots that I thought needed filled in, and then just using that dry brush again to draw those long lines straight across the top of the surface and also around the edges too. So all right, the next step is to let that dry, and it takes a while, especially if you have a really dark top, you put a lot of it on, it's going to take a while. So in the meantime, I'm going to put that hardware right back on the drawer, and I did paint these in the Rustoleum metallic spray paint. I promise this is not I am not being paid by Rustoleum for this video, although we should talk. But I do love all of their products, and they're so easily accessible. You can just go into your hardware store and they have so many Rustoleum products. I'm just sure of it. So I also took this time to put some really pretty contact paper in the bottom of the drawer, because as you can see, it's kind of got grease spots or something. I'm not sure. Let's just cover that all up. So we put this paper in, and it's adhesive and it just looks really nice. Make sure you measure and then cut, or like, what do they say? Measure twice, cut once. Or if you're like me, you measure 5 times and still end up cutting it wrong. But it's okay, it's very forgiving. And if you mess up, you just pull it right back out. So it's great. And once I get the hardware on, I'm gonna put this drawer in, and we're gonna kind of get a look at, oh my goodness, how it's gonna look. And then you sit back and marvel. And then you get back up and do whatever you need to do. So the final step after that top is dried is to put on the matte clear coat, which is by far my favorite finish. I know I've said a lot of these things are my favorite, but they really, really are. This one doesn't have any yellowing. It's truly clear. It might look a little bit milky whenever you're putting it on, but it will dry completely clear, and your chalk look will just look great underneath of it. So just trust me, when you're putting it on, it might look a little milky, but it's going to be perfectly clear whenever it dries. So again, that's one of my favorites. And you just apply that to the whole base, and I'm also going to apply it to the top surface, and that will be the final touch. Now I will say this look is really beautiful if you wanted to do any kind of distressing. So where you take the sandpaper and you distress the edges is a really neat look with this style. So you would want to do that between the paint, the paint is dried, and then before the top coat. So you want to do the distressing just before that matte top coat. That way you get to seal in the product and still have your distressed look if you'd like. I love that farmhouse look, which has really been popular. And just to remind you what our ugly duckling furniture used to look like and what it turned out looking like after just some love and tender care. It turned out to be a really beautiful living room piece for some dear friends who bought it, and I think it is a great addition to their home, and I think that you could do this quite easily on a piece of furniture for your own home. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you want to subscribe, there will be lots more videos like this in the future, I'm sure. Thank you.